On January the 6th, there was, this big protest in DC, and then the whole country went nuts, and we're still dealing with the fallout of that right now. And Parler falsely was scapegoated as the platform upon which the whole of January 6th's troubles was hoisted.
Why falsely?
Because every analysis done in the aftermath demonstrated that Parler was not the platform used to host the majority of content around planning for January the 6th.
Do they know what was?
Facebook, right? Every study has proved this. Every study has proved that Facebook was the overwhelming platform that the majority of January the 6th was planned on. In fact, Parler was not just a minority, it was a significant minority. But it was a threat. Its growth at that point was a threat. Mm-hmm. To suddenly go from a nothing platform to having 16 million accounts in a very, very short space of time, to being perceived as like a free speech challenger to the hegemony of the global tech oligarchs was like oligopoly, you can't have this, we have to shut it down, right? And so content violations, like content moderation, was cited as the reason, despite the fact that there had been all the concerns around content moderation had either been addressed or were no different to other platforms that operate in the space, Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. And so the platform was deplatformed by not just Amazon, Google, Apple, but about 19 other service providers. And Niall Gallagher and the UK Spectator wrote, it was like the most stunning demonstration of big tech's power ever to exist. Right. Wow. And it's true, because no company had ever been digitally deplatformed in the way that Parler was just booted off into the wilderness.
Were you associated with them at the time?
No.
What was it like for those folks?
It was chaos. I came in rapidly after that. It was kicked off in January the 10th. The former CEO was sacked by the board on January the 29th, and I was brought in at the end of February to help restructure the business. And
how did y'all get back online? And did Amazon and Google?
Yeah, it was a lengthy process. So there's several different stages to getting back online. To getting literally just back online, right, you need to find a new hosting provider, which is, data centers, servers, private cloud. We've just staged an acquisition in this space. We just bought a big private cloud hosting provider out of California with data center operations as well, because I now want to be able to take our narrative and go and pitch this to every other business that I think is going to get canceled. Like, the Catholic world is in the eye of the storm right now. There's just no doubt about it, right? If you're a pro-life, anti-trans organization in America, your days are numbered.
Neil, would you put a link to my Rumble account in the description? I'd like everybody to please go and subscribe over on Rumble and watch these shows over on Rumble, because you were saying to me that the other day, your days are numbered here. Yeah. You think that's...
Yeah, I think you are. I would definitely, I think you've got, at the moment, you're small enough. You got a great show. I love it. I watch it every week.
But it's under the radar right now.
It's under the radar, but when you get big enough, the target will grow on your back, and then you will get deplatformed because you're saying things that defy the narrative. And that, it's just, I would put money on it. If I was a betting man, I would put money on it. But every organization is gonna suffer this. This is the problem right now, is that we live in this era of mass cancellation and censorship. And so you're like the trans issue, it gets flagged the whole time. You misgender people, you're gonna get kicked off. You're pro-life. The abortion debate has not yet kind of triggered the switch, but as the viewpoints get more extreme on the left, it will become more of a hot topic issue. Right?
I thought that after Biden was elected, that maybe the temperature would decrease and the left would feel less threatened and cease coming after us. Yeah. That doesn't seem to be what's taken place.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find an appropriate metaphor in my head, but it's like, Biden was not the cold dose of water on the raging fire, in my opinion. His track record, is not one of peace and reconciliation.
No.
In many ways, I would say that.
And I didn't think that the temperature would decrease because he was that. I thought the temperature might decrease because they would think we're no longer under threat from Trump.
Yeah.
We have everything. We
Yeah.
have big tech. We have
well,
the universities.
The courts are still outside of their remit,
yeah.
and so that's obviously what's caused all these issues, particularly around social teaching. But of course, what Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh, wrote this in his opinion when he was talking about Roe versus Wade, is that this court does not have an opinion on abortion. He literally wrote that in his opinion, right? And it's just the blinding ignorance of people who argue this on the other side. You know, this court has no opinion on abortion. It's not about abortion. It's about the state's rights versus federal intervention, right? And this is the whole point. You can still get an abortion in America, right? I mean, go to New York, like they're now going to the opposite extreme. They're now, legalizing infanticide because it's perceived to be under threat. It's like it's not. It's the federal intervention on states' rights, and that is the nexus of the whole debate, right? And this is that is what people don't understand. They think somehow the court has an opinion on social teaching. You know, the court is there to interpret the Constitution and the law. It's not there to issue edicts on social teaching. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so
back to Parler.
Yeah, so
it went back online.
It got back.
How damaged was it?
Oh,
how bruised and beaten up and salvageable was it?
Yeah, it was.
Or are you still trying to figure that out?
a year and 10 months later. No, I mean it was a damaged good. There was absolutely no doubt about that. It was the worst business I've ever seen when I took over, because of the chaos. It's to the non tech mind or to the non tech world. It's like there's a startup attitude, right? And there's a startup mentality, which is kind of move fast, break things, try and get things back on, just try and change the narrative very quickly. This company was a startup, but now it required the monstrous restructuring effort that was needed to actually get it into fighting shape, right? So you were both restructuring a startup, which is highly unusual. Like I can't really think of any other startups of public recognition that have been restructured, right? There are small startups which go bankrupt the whole time and then they get restructured. This was a startup with a national brand and profile, with a huge footprint in terms of social media presence for an early stage company that had zero finances and needed to be restructured in the midst of carnage raging around it. So that was kind of the environment into which I stepped. At the end of February, beginning of March of 2021. And, I back when I was working in banking in London, like it was kind of rule of thumb that you would just work ridiculous hours all days of the week. I literally went into the office on Christmas Day and, one of the years I was working there. And I can honestly say that last year was harder in terms of the work than any other year I've ever worked. It was just brutal. And on top of that, we just had our first kid. We'd moved states. I was still really transitioning my life from moving countries from the UK. It was a tough year. It was a really tough year, and the Lord was gracious and kind and helped sustain us through it. And without Him, it would have been really difficult. It would have been really tough to do that without the Lord, I think.
Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you liked, and if you loved, subscribe.